Hello, everyone. This is Raise Your Voice as part of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Brett Rutherford, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Darby Robinson. We are live on the D-Rays Bay X account. We are live at youtube.com/@raiseyourvoice. And this will also be available as a podcast like every previous episode has been. And a couple of just housekeeping. We mentioned this on last week's episode. Every episode will now be available as a video on YouTube. We'll stream live on YouTube, and it'll be uploaded as a video afterwards. And also, we are now on Patreon. So once again, just don't want to pressure anyone into subscribing. But if you love our show and you want to say thank you, you can head on over to patreon.com/raiseyourvoice. We'd love to hear your feedback on that. If there's something maybe you'd like to see us offer on Patreon or something you'd like to see us do a little differently, maybe we'll take some fan comments on there. But again, nothing that you already get will be put behind a paywall ever. And if you'd just like to say thank you, you can head on over to patreon.com. But I'm here with my co-host, Darby. We've got a lot to talk about. The winter meetings are over, and Juan Soto is now a New York Yankee. Wow. Big news. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. The winter meetings were going very sleepy. There was not a lot of action going on. But then the big talk, the big rumors, everything really built around this conclusion of the Soto trade. And we were if this was going to be after Ohtani, like would the Padres wait and see if the market gets a little bit bigger for them? But it did seem like the Yankees and San Diego just were lined up, and there was getting closer and closer, and then we seemingly were there, and then medicals pulled it back a little bit, and then could this be another Carlos Correa situation? Yeah. But no, then it went over the finish line pretty much unchanged, it seems like, from the initial reports of what the package was. But yeah, I mean, it's a huge pickup for the Yankees. I think this is we are a Rays podcast. We're a Rays show. So this hurts the Rays' chances. This hurts everybody else in the AL East chances besides the Yankees. This is a huge move for them to add another big offensive weapon to go with Aaron Judge. It gives them another lefty in that lineup. Although Soto, Mike Petriolo had a really good article about how the short porch may not actually be that impactful for Soto. It helps. It's great. It's, if anybody can hit a fly ball that leaves the ballpark because it's such a short porch in right field, then that benefits. But Soto's such a complete hitter. He's such a good hitter. He uses the whole field. He is insane, and he's 25 years old. He's been traded twice. That's the part that I think is blowing a lot of people's minds, is that this is a guy on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He's a generational talent. He's a top 15 baseball player in all of baseball, one of the finest hitters in all of baseball, and he's been traded by two teams twice. That's kind of wild, and it's two teams that seemingly have money, although San Diego maybe is in a bit more financial dire straits. But like the Nationals are not exactly a small market club, and the San Diego Padres have not operated like a small market club, and yet he's going to the biggest market of all in New York.
Yeah, and like you said, this was a trade that was days in the making, or I'm sure it was longer than that, but we started hearing about this days ago, that the Yankees were feeling good. They felt like they were in a good spot to land Soto. We had heard of a couple potential other suitors, but the Yankees were the one team that were kind of being mentioned with some certainty that they were a player for Soto. Then we hear that it reaches a stalemate over the Yankees, their inclusion of Michael King, who is a good younger pitcher, but isn't like game changing to me. But you do have to keep in mind you're dealing with a Scott Boras client with 1 year left of control. The Yankees had to operate under the assumption that this is a rental. I don't anticipate Soto to extend to sign an extension with the Yankees before the start of the season, or really at any point. I think he's taking this to free agency, as we see with most Boras clients.
That seems like the plan, and I think that might have I think that's the big reason why San Diego decided to pass. It's the report of why the Nationals decided to deal him in the first place was that their initial offers were rebuffed and that they just felt like they were never going to be able to afford to pay him.
Now the Nationals did it with 2.5 years left, a little bit different than
very much so. Yeah, very much so. The Nationals also saw the writing on the wall in terms of rebuilding with him or jumpstart the rebuild. San Diego is in their contention window. Like they're kind of this weird team. They traded a lot to get Juan Soto.
Yeah.
As a big piece of that, it didn't work out very well last year, but like this is still their window. They still have, Machado and Tatis, and they signed Bogarts to a huge deal. Their pitching is kind of in trouble. But like
from an offensive standpoint, like they had the super team. It's like them and the Dodgers. If you looked at their lineups on paper, those amount of guys, a lot of them either yet to be in their prime or still in their prime, like Machado. That was supposed to be a really solid offense.
Well, and that's what's kind of funny, right? With this trade to the Yankees, there's been a lot of lineups posted. New lineups posted about like the Yankees, like, look at this lineup, who's going to beat this, blah, 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 blah. It always seems to be the case in the offseason, and it seems like the lineup which gets the most hype. It really does feel like it's probably not the statistical case, but it does feel like they always fall flat. Like the team that's like, who's stopping this juggernaut of a team? And it's like, looks like a lot of teams stopped them.
Yeah.
And that was the case with San Diego. It was like, this lineup is an unstoppable force, like the best top 5 like ever assembled ever. And then they kind of put up middling numbers. I think they ended up top 10 in offense, but like this was supposed to be like a world beating, record team. So when I look at the Yankees lineup, I will say that's a bit of caution. I don't want to undersell. This is a huge move. Absolutely great. If I do this, I do this 10 out of 10 times with this package for kind of both teams. I think San Diego, I like Michael King quite a bit. The full package, let's just actually bring that up, was Juan Soto and Trent Grisham. I think that's a really good move by Brian Cashman as well. I think Trent Grisham, his offense has not been very good the last couple of years, but he's very good defensively. He doesn't chase a lot. He strikes out a lot, but he doesn't chase a lot. So he strikes out in the zone. There's potentially more there. I don't know if he'll get there, but he is another lefty bat. So really trying to take advantage of that right field short porch. Grisham is a very good defensive outfielder, which I think is really important because right now the Yankees have one of the worst defensive outfields kind of assembled in the sport, with Aaron Judge, who's above average, Soto, who's well below average, and then we'll also talk about Alex Verdugo, who is another trade who's also not very good. But they get Soto and Grisham to fill out that outfield for Michael King, who has been kind of mostly working long relief for the Yankees, but he is a starter and I think is going to do really good in San Diego. Like, I think that's this is a big boost for him. I think this is good for his career. Drew Thorpe, Johnny Brito, Randy Vasquez, and Garrett Cole's personal catcher, Kyle Higashioka.
Yeah.
A nice haul for the Padres, kind of diversifying their portfolio there, adding a backup catcher, possibly actually a guy that's going to be starting. I mean, Gary Sanchez. They just love Yankees catchers over there. Some nice pitchers. Thorpe as well is an interesting, like the prospects they got are interesting. King is going to have an immediate impact. Higashioka is a really solid major league catcher. I like this deal for the Padres. It's just a confusing one because, again, when you are the team trading away the generational talent, I think you lean towards the team that gets a 25-year-old Juan Soto as the winner.
Yeah.
Even if it is a rental. I mean, I think this is something, this is a 1-year deal, and I think it'll probably go to free agency unless the Yankees wildly overpay. Boris doesn't really like to leave money on the table. It's still a good move for the Yankees because they can compete free agent wise for Soto. It gives them a year to sell Soto on New York. And also, Garrett Cole and Aaron Judge are not really like young, spry prospects. This is their prime. This is the window. And the Yankees have been really disappointing. And honestly, for Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone, they're probably, I mean, Aaron Boone's got to be very happy because, like, I don't know how many more years of disappointment and failure he could have had and still survived. That is his job.
No, I think his seat is hot. Cashman, I don't know. Cashman seems just so kind of enmeshed.
He might be tenured.
Franchise.
He might actually have like true tenure where they just can't fire him.
But you mentioned Aaron Judge, right? Who incredible player, one of the best in the game. Such a talented hitter, and we've seen him develop as a hitter since he first got up. And he seems to get better each year. He's going to be what, like 31, 32 this season? They now
had some injuries last year.
They're saying that he's probably going to play center field, which is like, all right, if we're going chips to the middle, 1 year of Juan Soto, Aaron Judge in center field, because as great as he is, and I want to, I don't want to, I'm not wishing injury or anything, but these things happen when you've got a 6'8" outfielder who has already dealt with some injury issues, getting into his mid-30s. Like that
lower body injuries on a guy that size.
The window is, I think, starting to close for the Yankees. And the Yankees have always operated like one or two losing seasons since in the last almost 30 years. Like their window is, I guess, kind of always open.
Yeah, it never locks. Let's just say that the window never locks. It's sometimes close. It might be a draft for a little bit, but it doesn't lock.
But you've got Judge and Cole, who are two truly elite players. And I don't know when the last time the Yankees had like the guy, like the pitcher and the hitter, maybe like when they first got Sabathia and you still had like A-Rod performing at a really high level offensively, like maybe like a 1 or 2 when they won the World Series, right? In 2009. Would have been when they had those two guys and they were both playing at really high levels. You've kind of got that in Judge and Cole right now. Garrett Cole coming off his first Cy Young award. The Blue Jays were another team that were mentioned in trade talks for Soto. It sounded like when it was a stalemate for the Yankees, maybe the Blue Jays had a sense that those talks weren't over. They were just kind of at a stalemate, and the Blue Jays were in there to maybe price check a little bit, but I think there was serious interest. The Blue Jays really want to bring in a big name player, whether that be Soto or Ohtani or I think I've heard them mentioned in the Yamamoto sweepstakes. Like they want to get a big fish, and those are the biggest fish available. And so the Blue Jays were mentioned in there too. I mean, that would have been Soto. Juan Soto would be great on any team, but I think he could really help this Toronto team this year too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm kind of surprised there was not much leaking about the interest in Soto, which either says the teams were pretty buttoned up about it, or San Diego just really wanted to build a package around like Michael King and maybe Thorpe, and like that was like their top targets. Like and when people called in for checking on prices, nothing really got all that close. Seattle was another one that was rumored to be in that range, but now they're kind of dealing with their own like hyper price restrictions. Their regional sports network, similar to Arizona and a couple other locations, just increased in pricing. It went to the upper echelon for the Comcast, and so that I think lost them a lot of money, and seemingly they didn't have the money to pay for Soto for a year, and potentially along with the bringing in Soto and having to pay the cost of trading for him, the total price, I guess you should say. But yeah, like Toronto, Seattle were the other two teams I heard of, but not really many other teams, or nothing leaked. And that's kind of strange. Like, I think Juan Soto, I mean, the hype will be there now that he's in New York, obviously, but like, this is an amazing player.
Yeah.
Like, this is we say generational talent. like truly, this is a Ted Williams level hitter with batter's eye, control of the all fields, just incredible hitting talent. Like last year, I believe there was a lot of talk about how like Juan Soto kind of had a really disappointing season. And then you look at his stats and you're like, wait a minute, what? This is disappointing? You know, like I don't think he's had a disappointing season, but it's disappointing for his level, right? It's by like in the world that he is playing in. That was maybe a little disappointing because they couldn't, carry the Padres a little bit further. But I mean, like, you look down the list, his worst season when he was 20 years old, back in 2019, he had a 143 WRC plus, hit 282 with a 401 on base percentage and a 554 slugging percentage.
And hit like 3 home runs in the World Series.
Yes. Yeah. He had 34 home runs in the regular season and then also was a force in the postseason in the World Series.
Hit that big home run off of Verlander.
Last year against San Diego, in his disappointing year, disappointing heavy quotation marks, he had a 155 WRC plus, batted 275, 410 on base percentage. He's never had an on base percentage under 400, and his slugging percentage was 519. I mean,
yeah,
like there is no like accolade you can say. Like he is not a good defensive outfielder.
No,
he's quite bad at that. That's it. That's the tool he's not good at. But he is an incredible hitter. Like maybe one of the best pure hitters sport. Period. So Yankees get a huge boost, and honestly, it's a great haul for San Diego. But you have to pay that. You have to pay that, even if it is just a year. Even if Soto ends up signing in Boston next year, you could have a World Series this year. Like, I think the bird in the hand is worth 2 in the butt. Like, there is an idea of like, you don't want to gut your franchise, but I don't think this is a trade that like completely ends the Yankees' future. No. They've been an amazing pitching development team. They traded a bunch of pitchers in this. They do need to add some pitching back. They are a little thin in that regard, but they are also a team much like the Yankees, much like Milwaukee. They can kind of just like create pitchers out of vapor. So I do think this is a trade for the Yankees that is it's a tremendous trade, right? It's a trade you make, you add a great player. It is a really confusing addition with the Alex Verdugo trade because that one happened beforehand. And then a lot of people were like, did the Yankees strike out on Soto? Turns out no. The lineup itself, they're going to maybe go more offense. But if that's the case, like you said, Aaron Judge is your center fielder, and that's a lot of pressure on that. And you then have 2 corner outfielders who are two really bad defensive outfielders, Verdugo and Soto. That would make up a really rough outfield. And you want Trent Grisham in there for defense, but his offense is not good. Mm-hmm. You have Stanton, who cannot play the field because his body will explode into a million pieces. I don't know how the Verdugo fit is there. It's a strange fit. And I do think I look at this Yankees lineup and not to, cope too hard, but like I do look at this lineup and I'm not seeing this as like, I don't think this trade makes the Yankees the team to beat. I think it gives them a huge boost. It makes them right into that contention window for the AL East title, but I don't think it clears the field. And they still have a ways to go this offseason. They're in on Yamamoto, which I think is big for them. They do need to add some more pitching. They are not done. And that lineup has a lot of question marks outside of the 2 superstars.
Definitely. Back to Soto. I mean, he's had some really good seasons, all-star level seasons. It feels like because he is still so young that we've got a couple of video game seasons ahead of us for Juan Soto. And I think my biggest fear as a Rays fan is that he'll change his approach at Yankee Stadium, which could lead to just a monstrous season. Obviously, people for years have been clamoring for the Yankees to go out and get these big left-handed power hitters to use that short porch in right field at Yankee Stadium. I mean, one, yeah, the Yankees probably should have had a more balanced lineup. Two, it's not as easy as it sounds. And Juan Soto is a guy who does spray the ball, but he is coming from very much a pitcher's park, where it's hard to just yank balls out of there, unless your name's Randy Arozarena and it's 2020, or Mike Brasso against the New York Yankees. It's hard to hit home runs there. I feel like Soto, being so disciplined at the plate, can change his approach, and he is just going to park a ton of home runs in right field for the Yankees. And yeah, I'm worried about that. Like, I'm worried about him coming in and single-handedly taking over series with the Yankees. Now, they have already have Aaron Judge, and the Rays have some serious hitters too. So I don't think this puts the Yankees as the team to beat. Like you said, I think they were already going to be in contention for the division with the team as is. I think you'll see some regression from the Orioles. The Rays, I mean, they've signed Chris Davinsky. We'll talk about that later, but it sounds like the biggest moves down the pipeline for the Rays are trading Tyler Glasnow and losing Wander Franco to suspension. So it's not like they're taking the field as this red hot team ready to reclaim the AL East. Like, they're going to be very good, don't get me wrong, but there are other teams in the mix. Toronto, if they get Shohei Ohtani, they're very much in the mix. Boston, yeah. I don't know. Boston seems like quite a ways away. Baltimore, I expect regression, but they'll be good. But yeah, the Yankees acquiring Soto is scary as a Rays fan, but nothing to panic about for sure. Any more thoughts on the Soto acquisition or kind of the fallout from it?
In general, the AL East best division in baseball, and it just gets better. Like that's the thing. It's like this is a tough division to have to play in, because you add now Juan Soto to the mix, and you have just a whole you have 4 legitimate World Series contending teams. And with Boston, I don't even think they're that far off from being a postseason contender or even making waves. Like, I really, really don't. I don't think this is like, there is not, it would be nice if Boston was an absolute disaster, just so that you can get some free banked wins like Baltimore was the last couple of years. But yeah, this is an amazing division. And yeah, you just added a top 15 player in baseball to that division. So the best just get better.
Yep. All right. Moving on to Chris Davinsky, who was a member of the Rays last season. Was that a waiver claim that they got him on?
It was. So it was in the Great Angels Purge.
Yeah.
Where they cut everybody not named Shohei and let anybody have them for free if you wanted them.
Well, he has now been signed to a $1 million contract, then $2 million for 2025 if the club option is picked up, or it was a $100,000 buyout, which was comically typo for Mark Topkin, $100 buyout, but no, he meant 100,000. So
I figured it was 100,000 at the time, but I also was like, maybe it is $100.
Yeah, a pretty lucrative deal for a guy that probably went into this offseason not guaranteed a big league job, and he gets it from the Rays.
A guy who's been kind of become a bit of a journeyman the last 5 years. Kind of bounced around. He was with Houston for a bit, got hurt, bounced around. He was a key kind of. Houston was doing the things the Rays also did with that, like, kind of bulking or multi-inning guys. Mm-hmm. They had Colin McHugh and Chris Davinsky as these like relief aces who go 2 to 3 innings in the middle, who are maybe more valuable than your closer because they will then get you to the closer. And that was like kind of part of that great like kind of analytical wave that Houston was doing. And he was a big part of that. He was kind of the poster child of like what you want. And then, he kind of had some struggles, as relievers do. Bounced around a little bit. Played with Arizona and Philly and the Angels. And as of last year, came over to the Rays. But he was definitely always been one of those Raysy type relievers. A guy whose best pitch is his changeup, throws it a ton, and kind of is a Oliver Drake-esque righty who is more of a loogie, more of a lefty guy, more of a guy that you use. Possibly a guy that we will see facing off against new Yankee Juan Soto quite a bit next year. It's interesting. I think the vote of confidence from the Rays to sign Devenski for money, for like real money, a major league deal, adding him to the 40-man roster, which again, I always say this time of year, that is the most valuable part. The money part is whatever. The actual roster spot is very difficult for these teams that are so good and so deep like the Rays are, that saying you get one of the 26 spots that we want on kind of opening day, or one of our 40-man spots right now for actual money.
Yeah.
That says that the Rays, who are rich in pitching, they want him to be part of this bullpen. And I think that's a really good sign. I liked what I saw from him. It was very brief, but he also was put on the postseason roster. Yeah. That's another big vote of confidence. The Rays are a team that knows pitching. And so when they say, we want this guy on there, we want him on our postseason roster, and we want to give him $1 million plus even have that option, I think those are really good signs that Devenski is in the play for this bullpen for at least the short term.
Yeah, I will say, I'll believe the Rays that they like something, because this is not like, in some of it, I'm bored, right? It's the off season. I want to see moves. I want to see trades. I want to see what the Rays have up their sleeve. And then it's like the end of the winter meetings, and they signed Chris Devenski to a 1-year deal with a club option for a second. And he's kind of been this okay journeyman reliever. And he's got over 350 innings pitched in the big leagues, a 3.78 ERA. Really good strikeout to walk ratio. Like, the guy's figured it out. Like, he's had a very good big league career, better than most relievers can say. And I hope, and I know they'll know when to use him. I'm expecting him to come in, like you said, maybe 2-run lead going into the 9th in Yankee Stadium, and he's got to face Soto, Judge, Rizzo. Maybe he'll strike out Soto, he'll walk Judge, and then Rizzo double play to end the game. And Chris Devenski will get his first and only save in a Rays uniform. Maybe that'll happen, but I'm okay with the signing. And like you said, it's filling out just a valuable bullpen spot. The rest of the bullpen pretty locked up. I think looking decent, right? I'm pretty happy with that. Tyler Alexander's another guy who we'll see if he cracks the opening day roster, a left-handed pitcher picked up from Detroit on waivers.
The one other thing with Devenski, and this is the part I don't believe, but it has to be mentioned because Eric Neander mentioned it and Topkin mentioned it. It was one of those things that maybe they might even stretch out Devenski. There's been those conversations. So I do not believe that. I do not see that, but he has in the past, again, like Colin McHugh, been a not just one inning guy. Listen, after last year with you have Jeffrey Springs. I never count Drew Rasmussen. Everybody always counts Drew Rasmussen. He was a starter for pretty much everything. The Brewers always, like Freddie Peralta and Brandon Woodruff, they would always bring him up as a reliever and then move him back to starter.
Glasnow was the same way.
But Tyler Glasnow, Jeffrey Springs, and of course Zach Littell. Okay, listen, I don't believe it, but who knows?
Don't you think they have those discussions about like just about every pitcher other than Fairbanks, Adam, Kittredge, Poche, probably?
I think limited. It's. I think you have that conversation about pitchers that have the right makeup.
But I think the Rays are just getting those guys, and then they decide after they acquire them.
Yeah,
I think that discussion is had with every pitcher they bring in. It's probably been had with Sean Armstrong, with Garrett Clevenger, and you just decide, no, we'll leave them in more of their 1 or 2 inning roles.
Well, I think this is also a big part of why the Rays are successful, and why a lot of teams can't really replicate some of those similar things. Is that there is I know the Rays get basically labeled as this heartless, cold, analytical spreadsheet monsters, but they're an extremely holistic team that is all about the like human element and the human side of things. Like Kyle Snyder is in constant conversation with like every pitcher on the roster all throughout the offseason, just checking in on dudes. And I think that is part of it, is that like Zach Littell has a pretty wide pitch arsenal and actually works really well with no like extreme splits. He works well against lefties, works well against righties. So that makes sense for a starter. He has 4 pitches. That makes sense for a starter. But I also think he has the right makeup and attitude to be able to do that. And I think he wasn't thrown into that. It was a process. Before his first like kind of true start, he was working multi-innings. And he had even said later on that like this was something they approached him with. They talked about it well before they actually did it. So I do think that's the thing, right? Is that the Rays don't throw a person out there as like kind of chum in the water. They don't say like, hey, Chris Davinsky, why don't you throw 4 tomorrow? I think it's one of those things where it's very purposeful. It's very organic, and it's working with somebody to be like, is this something you want to pursue? Is this something we think you can do? And so they have the confidence in them. The player has the confidence to be able to achieve that. Now, all that being said, I don't really see that with Davinsky because he is such a good lefty specialist as a righty. But you can never say never when it comes to the Rays and pitchers and developing and utilizing pitchers in interesting ways. I'll just say that. I think the Rays have a good plan for Davinsky, whether that's a starter, whether that's just like an extended opener, which we have seen with Sean Armstrong, right? It may be you need to get 27 outs. So however you get that, that's it's very antiquated to say you need somebody for the first 12, 15 or so every single time. You can have a Sean Armstrong who gives you 8 or 9 outs, 3 innings pitched, and then turn that over. So it'll be interesting to see how he's used, but I think Davinsky's a good pitcher, and I'm glad he's sticking around. You're muted.
I'm back. Definitely an exciting, somewhat exciting signing if you're into pitching. And now that domino has fallen, let all the other big pitchers figure out where they're going. I think the market was being held up by
Snell
Chris
was
Davinsky.
waiting. Snell was waiting for,
I want to get to the Ohtani of it all in just a few minutes, but kind of wanted to go through the Rays roster and where they stand now that the winter meetings are up. Some of the dominoes I think we were waiting to fall as Rays fans didn't. Again, some of that being held up by the Ohtani market. Tyler Glasnow, still a Ray, although it's now been reported more so by Mark Topkin that it does seem like a likelihood. Nothing is imminent from what he said. Nothing is guaranteed, but it seems likely that Glasnow will be moved. And that's what we've been hearing from some national reporters pretty much all off season. And we've all come to accept it as Rays fans. We're just waiting for the Ken Rosenthal or Jeff Passan or Mark Topkin tweet. I don't know if this is one that Topkin will get a hold of first or not. With some of the bigger trades, he typically gets beat to the punch. But Randy Arozarena and Isaac Paredes, both still Rays. It now sounding like, could they be moved? Yeah, why not? But the or the eagerness, right, to make those trades happen was probably more so on the teams trying to acquire those players because they're really good players. Isaac Paredes, young, controllable, power-hitting corner infielder. Yeah, a lot of teams are going to be interested in that. Randy Arozarena, star power, all-star upside. A lot of teams are going to be interested in that. The Rays trading those guys, yeah, shoot us an offer. We'll have a discussion, but we're not in any rush to trade either of those players. Again, Mark Topkin kind of providing some clarification while he was at the winter meetings in his reporting. But the Rays roster currently stands. You've got, I'm just reading off a roster resource, Yandy Diaz, Wander Franco, Randy Arozarena, Josh Lowe, Isaac Paredes, Brandon Lau, Jose Siri, Luke Raley, Rene Pinto. They've got Alex Jackson listed as the backup catcher, although right now he's not even on the 40-man roster. Taylor Walls, Manuel Margot, and Harold Ramirez. Topkins also reported that Margot and Ramirez are 2 players that the Rays would like to trade if they can find suitable partners. but he kind of implies that, again, they're okay with having them on the team. Like the Eric Neander said right after the season, we're okay with running it back. We think we have a really good team. Sounds like they got to shave payroll a little bit. Why not trade the injury-prone starting pitcher with a year left on his contract?
Similar to the Soto trade, honestly, in the sense. It's like a team that's not like punting, but clearly financials need to shave some money. And you're saying maybe we can actually help ourselves out by moving this person and kind of rearranging.
And bring in maybe an upgrade on the position player side, because it looks like the positions of need are catcher, right? You've got Renee Pinto and Alex Jackson, who I think the Rays have a lot of faith in, but that's probably ranks pretty low among Major League Baseball in terms of catching duos.
Pinto's a major league catcher. I'm pretty after last year. I think he is a major league catcher, but no catcher is playing 130 games, so
he might be a below average catcher. We'll see.
Yeah, I'd say we'll see. I mean, I think he's shown potential signs of being at least average, which is honestly better than a lot. But yeah, I think they're still missing a catcher.
Yeah, average isn't bad. Average is better than half.
Yeah. That's how math works. Yeah.
Wander Franco.
The Rays know that because they're good at math.
Yeah, it's all the analytics.
That's analytics. Get that out of baseball.
Wander Franco still listed as a shortstop. Obviously, we know nothing, which is pretty shocking.
Talk about lack of leaks.
Yeah,
my God.
So maybe, shortstop. You've still got Junior Caminero. You've got Taylor Walls. A couple other guys you might throw out there. Osleivis Basabe, Isaac Paredes. I don't know. I'm nervous about the shortstop position. I'm excited to see Caminero come up, but I don't think he's a shortstop. Maybe he can play there some this year.
A day. Yeah, not starting.
Yeah. I also forgot to mention
I don't think he's your starting shortstop if you really want to punt it.
Yeah. You've also got Junior Caminero, Curtis Mead, Austin Shenton, Osleivis Basabe, Greg Jones on the 40-man roster. I don't think there's any obvious upgrades other than catcher, and then maybe a shortstop. But I don't know really what the market is, what you're going to be able to get there. Maybe there's an interesting trade that we see where the Rays get a shortstop. I've said it, not jokingly, but not with any thought that it's going to happen. I'd love to see them acquire Willy Adames. It would just be really fun to see him back in a Rays uniform. I don't think it will happen, but would be fun.
It would be fun. I'd love to see Willie back.
And then with the pitchers, we still have Tyler Glasnow, Zach Eflin, Zach Littell, Aaron Savale, Shane Baz, Pete Fairbanks, Jason Adam, Colin Poche, Andrew Kittredge, Sean Armstrong, Garrett Clevenger, Chris Davinsky, Tyler Alexander. Hurt pitchers, we've got Shane McClanahan, Drew Rasmussen, Jeffrey Springs, and then Taj Bradley, Jacob Lopez, Yoniel Correa, Colby White, Kevin Kelly, and Manuel Rodriguez. If you trade Glasnow, you're going to need starting pitching help, right? You might even need it if you don't trade him.
So starting pitching is a very interesting position for the Rays because you need really good starting pitching because they have a lot of solid starting pitching. And they're in a spot where at the end of the season, they could have a great rotation right now because Jeffrey Springs is throwing. That's something that came out of the winter meetings. He's looking pretty good. Both him and Rasmussen are still on track for that mid-season July return. So that's something there. Shane Baz, potentially ready for opening day, is the reports there. That's definitely something. Taj Bradley with another year. Zach Littell, solid kind of back end of the rotation guy. Savale, Eflin. It's one of those spots where you need pitching. I don't know if you need. I think the Rays honestly will try to get some pitching back and acquire pitching, but not necessarily headhunt for like that top tier at this point. So like the Cubs have come up a lot. Javier Assad, Hayden Wesneski, are two really interesting options pitching wise. You add those to the list and you just kind of cycle through, and you hope that, I think, a returning Shane Baz and a step up season from Taj Bradley could be the impact pitchers that you really need to go with really rock solid. Zach Eflin. I think Aaron Savali for a full year is also going to be quite good. Zach Littell is really solid. I think that the pitching I'm not too worried about the pitching, to be perfectly honest, even without Glasnow. But I do think they'll probably add more because of that uncertainty, because, people are getting injured. Like, that's just the nature of it. So you have people like Shane Baz coming back from injury, don't know what you can count on. You hope it's a lot, but you don't know what you're going to count on. You don't know if Rasmussen and Springs have setbacks or whether they come back. So you can't really bank those in, but you also can't necessarily not leave a spot.
And there's some chatter that the Rays want Rasmussen to come back in a different role.
Again, Rays don't really necessarily have to use pitchers in one specific way. Like, It's not setup man, closer, starter. They might say, like, we want you to use so many innings and innings limits. So I think there's a lot of raw material there. I think you got guys like Jacob Lopez, who could be interesting. I think Yonel Cure being added is interesting. I think that's more of a bullpen potentially option.
He's one of those guys you might see late in the season if they need like another hard throwing guy.
Could be a Jose Alvarado type where the command's not all the way there, but the stuff is so good that you just say,
let her up.
Hopefully get your command a little bit better. And that can work. I think the bullpen I'm not concerned about at all. Even losing Robert Stevenson, because I think the Rays just will create another Robert Stevenson. They'll create three more. The one position, I said it last year when the bullpen was really shaky at the beginning of the season. It's the one area where it's like, if you're the Rays, if that's the problem, that's great. Because by the end of the season, you'll figure it out. And they did. I'd love to have Jake Diekman back. I think he's a really good, similar to Davinsky, like not an expensive guy, nice lefty. I don't know if there's even a spot, but like if you could maybe trade like a Colin Poche, if the value is pretty high for him and you can trade him for something else, then maybe you add Diekman back to get you another lefty back. But adding Garrett Clevenger is huge. Like that was a big loss, but that's a really talented lefty there. I'm very happy with the bullpen. The rotation, there's question marks, but there's a lot of depth of talent. When they trade Glasnow, but probably when, that does leave some high-end talent off. But I will say, I think this depth is strong enough that they will give you a productive starter every day, and that's going to be enough for a lot of games. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's a long grind. So I think yes to add a pitcher, no to needing to add like a Blake Snell or a top end talent.
I think maybe there was some interest, if the Rays traded either a Rosarena or Paredes to get one of the Mariners' top pitchers back in return, someone that you probably think slots right into the middle of the rotation and where's our arbitrary line at for starting pitching acquisition? Is it the Aaron Savale? Yeah.
Aaron Savale. I think that's the line, right? I think if you're worse than Aaron Savale, we have plenty of those. In the past, by the way, I don't know if we've talked about this on the show, I'm sure, but we know we've brought it up in articles. In the past, it was the Drew Rasmussen line. Mm-hmm. It was like the Jeffrey Springs line.
It might have been the Tyler Glasnow line around 2020.
It was the Tyler Glasnow line at one point. Yes, Tyler Glasnow, and then he sailed over that line.
Yeah.
So there, I think there's always that, like, it's like the third starter, right? Like the Rays have plenty of 4-5 types. Your Zach Littel's, potentially later on, your Tyler Alexander's or Chris Davinsky's transformed into that. Mm-hmm. But the upper, is this person good enough to move Aaron Savale down in the rotation? That's the line, right? Is this enough of a pitcher who can be as good or basically move him down from 3 to number 4? Mm-hmm. That's the question. I don't know if there's a lot out there. I think there's guys like if it is the Cubs, which has had the most like buzz, but the Reds have also been in the list for Tyler Glasnow. There's pitchers there, Nick Lodolo, Connor Phillips, like high-end talent that has not produced yet that are close to the majors. So Hayden Wesneski, Connor Phillips, Nick Lodolo, those are like really interesting arms that I think could be great next year for the Rays and could be above the Savale line, or performance-wise, they might fall below it, but they are guys in that range. So I think that's what they need to look for is the Aaron Savale range to add on. And they have a lot of right now that's interesting because the discussion from some quotes from Neander and Topkin kind of relating. We mentioned it earlier, and I just want to make sure before we move on that the Randy Arozarena talk and the Isaac Paredes talk, all that stuff coming into the winter meetings, all that buzz from the national reporters, right? You have Rays fans saying like the Rays are shopping these guys. They weren't shopping them. They haven't been shopping them. And I don't think they are shopping them now. And all the reports from Topkin are the Rays are shopping Tyler Glasnow. They're shopping Manuel Margot. They're shopping Harold Ramirez. And teams are going,
nothing.
Manuel Margot, no. Randy Arozarena, though. I like a right-handed corner outfielder. What about him? And the Rays are like, okay, what do you got? And then they go, what about this? And they're like, no, not even close. So like, but like, it's nice to know, like, oh, okay. So like Bryce Miller's available. Interesting. Okay. Good to know. I think that's the goal, right? Is like maybe next year, again, we talk about it. You circle back and go, okay, you were interested in Randy. You still interested in Randy? Let's talk again. But I think that's the key, right? Is they weren't shopping those two pieces. Nobody is ever untouchable on the Rays, but I do think that is an important distinction for Rays fans that they are not going into this offseason saying, we got to move these three guys. They are going in saying, we have a good team, but, and Neander's mentioned this, right? This is a team that won 99 games. They were one of the best offenses in baseball last year, pretty much as assembled. So you can just roll that back and be fine with that offense. But you always try to look to improve. How do you improve? And they've mentioned the people they're shopping are the people that we mentioned as the best choices to kind of move on. They obviously don't listen to us. We just kind of know this team so well that we kind of know what would be shopping is Manuel Margot, Harold Ramirez. Harold Ramirez was a good bat last year. Very good bat. Manuel Margot, we would miss his defense in the outfield. But those are two pieces on the 26-man roster that you could move. And then that opens up the door for Junior Caminero. It opens the door for a Curtis Mead, who are just basically slamming on the door. Baseball America just released their list. Junior Caminero, 80 grade power, top prospect in the Rays, a top 10 prospect in baseball. You saw him come up last year. Saw him in the postseason last year. This is a guy that could start opening day for the Rays, give them a chance to get that Rookie of the Year draft pick. But where's the spot? You have Isaac Paredes. You have Harold Ramirez at DH. It's kind of blocked up. So I do think the Rays are going to really try to move those pieces, not necessarily for the money. Harold, Manuel Margot has a pretty good chunk of money, but like the spots are just, you're getting into a good problem where you have Curtis Mead, a very talented hitter. You have Jonathan Aranda, is a very talented hitter. They just don't have spots for these guys yet. So I think that's why you see those players shopped. Randy and Isaac Paredes, you don't move them to open up the spot for a Junior Caminero unless somebody pays the king's ransom. And it seems like so far nobody has come that close. After Ohtani signs, maybe suddenly teams get a little desperate. Who knows? But it is nice to hear that the Rays, to confirm that they weren't ever shopping Randy or Paredes, but more of a team just keep bringing him up because we're trying to trade Manuel Margot and nobody wants to hear it. They really want to at least make sure that Randy Arozarena isn't going for cheap.
Yeah, and same thing with Harold Ramirez. No, I don't want Harold, but I'll take Paredes.
A weird right-handed bat who just seems to, I don't understand why they produce, but they produce a ton. Or like, what about that guy? Like, yeah, okay.
And like you said, once Ohtani's off the board and Yamamoto's off the board, the market might change. Those guys might still. There might be another weird trade. Brandon Lau's name might get brought up. Yandy Diaz's name might get brought up. Like, no one is off limits. I do think, and I don't know. I mean, I do feel like the Rays are clearly trying to cut payroll, and that this money saved on Tyler Glasnow won't be immediately reinvested. But they're also in a really interesting spot. They still don't truly know whether or not they'll be on the hook for Wander Franco's contract, and if he'll be on the team. They're about to get underway with a giant construction project to keep the team in St. Pete. Like, there are a lot of uncertainties for the Rays, and it doesn't feel like this will be the year that they're going to come in breaking the payroll record by like $50 million, which is, I think, maybe between 40 and 50 is what they're set to break their own franchise record for payroll. Doesn't feel like the year where we should expect something like that. It does feel like they do probably need to trim the wage bill a little bit.
Yeah, and a little bit. And I think it coincides again with Tyler Glasnow. I think you would still rather keep Tyler Glasnow than have to trade him, but you also do look at, we've talked about that, the risk, the reward factor for a guy who has had huge injury history, another year older, limited innings, and potential return. Like, again, I don't think that's the thing, right? Tyler Glasnow is not a guy that you need to move before the end of the offseason. Otherwise, the stadium deal's off, the team's bankrupt, they can't do anything. If nobody makes a good offer, they'll just hold him. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think when you look at this pitching market, Ohtani's not pitching next year. Yamamoto is a question mark, but is going to be your best pitcher available. Blake Snell is also going to be available, but there is some question marks about, again, like limited innings, kind of a little bit more volatility. Tyler Glasnow is right there in that next wave below Ohtani of Yamamoto, Snell, and Glasnow. Only 1 year deal, not a terrible price to pay. He's going to have plenty of, and we talked about it with the Soto trade, right? Yes, it's a rental, but a banner counts the same this year as it does next year. So
yeah,
trade some pieces that might be nice, but aren't going to potentially win you a World Series this year for a guy that maybe can. Whereas the Rays are in a similar spot where they have a pretty solid lineup, but they could definitely lose Harold, Manny, and Glasnow and be marketably similar in terms of their outcome. Maybe not improve, but be similar. And then you see that potential improvement from Junior Caminero coming up and becoming the next Juan Soto.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I'm not worried about the Rays going into the season. I'm interested to see how these deals play out, because it could, the Rays could enter 2024 on paper as a worse team, and they need some things to break their way. And maybe they will. Maybe this is the year they stay healthy, about and on the pitching side, and weird things happen in teams. I think it's more of a baseball thing, but maybe you think you're a year too late or a year too soon, and that just happens to be the year. Because
Baltimore was a year too early.
Yeah, right.
And look at that.
And a lot of that, I think, is what the Rays philosophy says, right? Just make it to the dance and see what happens. And with this roster, even with some of the moves we've talked about, I'm not worried about them competing to be in the postseason. It's not going to be easy. It never is. That's why so few teams make it as often as the Rays do. And I think that's where we should feel confident and comfortable as Rays fans. Wrapping up the show, we haven't mentioned Shohei Ohtani, which probably good for SEO. Just Shohei Ohtani. Just say
we're not mentioning him so that we have a chance to sign him to Raise Your Voice. He doesn't want people to talk about any potential meetings. So if you talk about him, then he cuts you. That's
good thing I mentioned the lunch that Ohtani and I grabbed before we started recording, before we went live. It was great.
Can we just very briefly, this has been a very funny scenario because a couple of things. One, legacy reporters are losing their minds over this like Ohtani lid that he has put on this. They are basically saying it's bad for baseball, and he's hurting this whole idea of not broadcasting the thing, which is just like hysteria. Just like, get over yourselves. This is silly. He gets to do whatever he wants to do. He is a unicorn. He gets to do whatever he wants to do. It's totally fine. Get over yourselves. 2, I just love that you have like Dave Roberts going out there with the Dodgers talking about, yeah, it was a great lunch. This is what we had. We chatted. He's an amazing player. He's the best player. We'd love to have him. We're trying to sign him. And then while he's talking, he's getting texts from basically Andrew Friedman that's saying, shut up. And then like the next day, like Friedman and the Dodgers are like, yeah, he really talked a lot. Yeah, that Dave, he kept chatting. Whatever. It's very funny.
I don't know what Shohei Ohtani is thinking, right? It's clear that he wanted this to be done as privately as possible, and good on him. Mm-hmm. I don't think like he's going to make his decision based on whether or not Dave Roberts mentioned. Like, everyone knew the Dodgers wanted to sign Shohei Ohtani. Yes. Everyone has known that like they were going to be not only in it, but probably the favorites to sign him since like a year and a half ago. Yeah. And so Dave, like, I don't think Shohei Ohtani was getting ready to sign with the Dodgers and then is watching MLB Network when Dave Roberts starts running his mouth and is now going to go sign with Toronto or San Francisco or whoever.
Toronto mentioned that they met with him in Dunedin.
Yeah.
So they're out. They're done.
And they're, like you mentioned, like some of the legacy reporters, and it's frustrating as a baseball fan. I understand why they do it, because some of these other leagues do it, specifically the NBA and the NFL. They monetize their offseason so much. All the stakeholders in those leagues rake in tons of cash in the offseason. We've got like the NBA free agency company, these major media companies get so many clicks off of the moves at the start of free agency. Then you have the draft lottery. Then you have the draft itself. The NFL has the combine and the draft. And there's these opportunities to monetize everything. And it feels like that's what baseball has tried to do in recent years in the winter meetings. And while the winter meetings are often a place where a lot of these discussions are had, a lot of deals are done at the winter meetings, it's never been as crazy as like what it's made out to be, especially coming into this year. This was the year everyone, Ohtani will make his decision. Glasnow will be traded. Soto will be traded. All of these stars are going to be moved, and it's all going to happen here in Nashville at the winter meetings. And that's like never been the case for the winter meetings. There's always moves made, but there's never like this bonanza. Like everyone's getting moved at the winter meetings. It's just a lot of discussions, and the winter meetings, cool event, but like we don't have to try to make this anything it's not.
I've seen some interesting what is it? I've seen some people propose some wild ideas about how like you put a limit where it's like at the end of like the winter meetings, there's like a 1-month moratorium on deals, right? Mm-hmm. So it forces you to potentially do that. I don't know, all these gimmick stuff. I just think that baseball just doesn't work. To make baseball more like those other those leagues, you have to fundamentally change the economics of baseball.
Right.
Like there is a big difference why baseball is so glacially slow when it comes to their moves, and the NBA and the NFL are so fast. And it's because there's no cap in baseball. So Shohei Ohtani could get anywhere from $500 million to $600 million to $1 billion to
a 1-year $50 million deal.
It could be anything. He could do anything. It could be a 90-year deal worth X number of money, which will then go through his entire lineage. Like it could be anything. Whereas in the NBA, every team says, here is the Supermax.
Yeah, and there are rules about like, what contract you can get based on your years in the league, and if you've switched,
you can get 4 or 5. You can get X number of dollars, and it's like that's it. You just have to pick where.
Yeah,
it's not a who's going to get creative with the deal. There's no creativity. It's here's a bunch of money. The only thing that's changed with the NBA is now players are talking to each other, and sometimes illegally, if it's LeBron's case, and just texting people being like, hey, why don't we just all like meet up here? So like that's how that works. But like, you can't do that in Major League Baseball. If there was like a Supermax and it was like a 10-year, $500 million deal, Shohei Ohtani would have those offers, and then he would get to decide who, sells him the best. But that's not the case. It could be anything. Now, all the deals are going to be fairly similar, but they could be structured wildly different. They could be backloaded. They could be front-loaded. They could be any number of things. So it's just going to mean that baseball moves slower. It's just going to mean that also people are going to be waiting on Shohei Ohtani because all the other teams don't want to spend money on anybody else if they might have to spend it on Ohtani. So it's just the economics of the sport. If you had a salary floor and a salary cap, and you had limits on exactly how much money each player made, depending upon years in the league and their contract status and bird rights and all that, like NBA, it's extremely restrictive. That's why every other athlete wants to be in baseball. Everybody always talks about which other sport. They'd be like baseball, because you can get so much money for anybody with almost no restrictions. Whereas like, yeah, you're only going to get so much if you're an offensive lineman. You can't get so much.
And in the NFL, so very few players get guaranteed dollars, like more than a year or two of their deal. A lot of quarterbacks do now, and probably left tackles and defensive ends, the premium positions. Just
running backs get a pub sub and like a bus ticket, and the second they get hurt, and they're like, you're washed up and you're never going to sign another deal at 26. So yeah, it's a totally different situation, right? Like it's going to be slower, but that's just good economics of baseball. It hurts as a fan because you're like, I want to see action. I want to see adventure. Also, baseball, it's so risk averse. Everybody's so risk averse. So you're not going to want to rush into these deals. So that's why the trade deadline is always so exciting, because it really does. Unless you put caps, unless you put like arbitrary time points, these GMs are going to take forever to actually make a decision.
Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah, did you see Brad Paisley at the draft lottery?
I did not.
Yeah, they had him at the draft lottery.
Which draft lottery?
Had some crazy results. The baseball one.
The baseball one. Oh, I didn't.
No. They had.
I totally missed that. I was working.
Yeah, which is like, again, you don't need to, like, I don't care about the draft lottery. I don't know. I don't know, Darby. I think both of us are pretty diehard baseball fans. Do you name me one 2024 draft prospect? Like top draft prospect.
Oh,
someone on Wake Forest, probably. Like, there's like the one guy from the Florida Gators, Jack something, that is a two-way player now, and hits a ton of bombs. Other than that, like, I don't know any. Like,
I can't even.
So I definitely don't care who picks fifth. Like,
I think the draft lottery, I did remember seeing the buzz for that after. I did not see, Brad Paisley, that's interesting. But like, I saw that Oakland got sixth. Which is truly awful.
The Guardians are picking first.
And they're picking first. They're picking somebody who's really good, I'm sure. Or they won't. Or they'll pick somebody not as good who will sign for cheaper so that they can do. Again, baseball is totally different than any other sport. You can't. I know, like, I went to I was in the all-star game this I was there, so I saw the whole draft setup and all of that. It's just not even that interesting, because like, it's fun, but like, none of these players are going to play for years.
Right.
Nobody knows who they are because nobody watches college baseball, which they should. It's actually quite fun, but like, nobody watches college baseball. There's aluminum bats, there's wood bats, there's like so
terrible
much
defense, terrible pitching.
It's not. I think you want it to be. It's much more akin to the hockey, the NHL draft, where you're like, I don't know who this is. I won't need to know who this is for a while unless it's Connor Bedard.
Right.
But
And baseball has their Bryce Harpers, their Steven Strasburgs. Yes. Like they have their phenoms.
There's occasionally that. But Aaron Judge wasn't even that.
No.
Mike Trout wasn't even that. So even the best players of today aren't necessarily the top prospects of yesterday. So it's a tough thing. Free agency, the trade deadlines, the draft, baseball is you can't, I think when people compare that to other sports, it's always going to look worse because the other sports, we all watch, everybody watches the March Madness. People don't watch college basketball, but they will watch March Madness and you will see these players. And even with the NBA, you're getting players like Scoot Henderson who are in like the NBA G League, like alternative camps where you're getting that like kind of high school, but not high school, but like they played foreign or they played NBA G League at the Ignite. Like, so there's like even that where you're like, I don't know who this player is, but they're very talented. I don't know who this EuroLeague player is, but they're very talented. But most of that are players that people have seen in college. They know they're going to be drafted highly. They've seen them play. And next year, they're going to play right away. They're going to be starting. They're going to be playing, Paolo Banchero for the Orlando Magic. It's like, he's a game changer for them. And NFL is by far the like pinnacle of drafts because college football is the pinnacle and it's mandated. So I just think baseball does this. We do ourselves a disservice as fans when we try to compare it to other things because it's a different beast altogether. So we just have to enjoy. The Rays will be picking 18th in the draft.
Yeah, they actually got in the lottery because someone lost picks, and so they were in there early.
I don't even know. I saw that, and I was like, we got a buzz like the Rays are picking 18th, and I'm like, how?
Yeah,
so 99 games.
I don't even know how it works, but we'll take it. We'll take it. And again, like I want the draft and some of these other peculiar things. Like it's not ever going to be like entertaining to the masses, and so I'd rather Major League Baseball. Selfishly, I'd rather them tailor it to like the diehard fans and talk about things in a different way. And like you'll hear they'll interview these players, and it's so much different. In baseball because some of these players have to decide whether or not they're going to sign. And they're like, how does it feel to be a member of the Pittsburgh Pirates and you're going to go play A-ball and ride a bus for a couple months? Like it's not glamorous like these other leagues. And that's not how baseball works. And so I'd rather watch like draft coverage and other things in like through the lens of like the diehard fans that maybe have read up a little bit, but want to learn more about who these guys are as players and how they grade out by pro scouts. Anyways, we'll talk about the draft when we get closer to the draft, but we've gone over an hour, so we've covered a lot. You got one more thing?
The only last thing I want to mention of the winter meetings, the other thing that happens that also is a nothing burger every single year, I always talk about it, I always act nice and snarky on Twitter, is the Rule 5 draft. Rule 5 draft happened. The Rays again lost one person, unfortunately, to Colorado for them. That's going to be pitching in Colorado. I guess you're in the majors. But again, every year we look at the Rule 5 draft. There was, I think, 6 players taken total, 7 players in the major league portion, a lot more in the minor league. That's more kind of shuffling. The minor league portion is very interesting. The major league portion, occasionally get a Kevin Kelly for the Rays.
Occasionally you get a middle relief guy.
And that's like one of the best scenarios. But this year the Rays, they signed Davinsky, so they went to 40 spots, so they could not pick in the Rule 5 draft. The only other team that had 40 spots was the Dodgers. Good company, team skipping out on the most interesting, least consequential date on the entire MLB calendar. The Yankees lost 2 pitchers back-to-back, 1 and 2. Maybe we'll get them back. Who knows? They probably don't care. It happened. It happened, and now we can go back to not worrying about the draft or the Rule 5 draft. Yeah. We can go back to saying, oh, Blake Hunt didn't get taken. Oh, Cole Wilcox didn't get taken. We're back. It's over. Calm down. Every year, we always freak out who doesn't get added. I get it from Rays fans' perspectives. Josh Hamilton wasn't protected that one time, and he turned out to be one of the best Rule 5 picks of all time. But that's just it's not going to happen. There's not going to be another one of those. And I don't know. It might be like last year where Jacob Lopez got taken and then returned because he wasn't good. Because he's a Rule 5 pick. Because they're in the minors for a reason. Anyway, we get to go another year without thinking of the Rule 5.
Oh, I'm already thinking about next year, Darby, about who we're going to protect and who we could get.
Like round number 3.
I don't know. The Tigers have this switch hitting second baseman in A-ball. He might be worth a shot next year.
But they might not be able to fit him on their 40-man. Who knows?
Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Raise Your Voice. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, turn on those notifications so you know when we go live. Make sure to follow at DRaysBay on Twitter, at Darby_Robinson, at BG Rutherford99, and at RYV Podcast. We go live. We'll eventually try to nail down like a schedule. Right now, holiday season, we're both very busy. We're both traveling a bit. It's hard to nail down a date and time, but we will try to, come up with some sort of regular schedule for you guys. But you can always, if you love what we do, you can head over to patreon.com/raiseyourvoice and become a Raise Your Voice subscriber. There's 3 different tiers. If you've got any feedback for us for Patreon, just let us know. And as always, make sure to head on over to draysbay.com to check out all of the great Rays coverage. Have a good night, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.